Hi, my name is Ben Upham. I am the author of The After Age, Why We Are Going to Be Okay and How You Can Help Us to Be Great. This video is part of a series of videos based on that book. It's the second video in the series. There is, in other words, a video before this one, which you can watch if you'd like, but you probably don't need it to understand what's going on here or to get the most out of this video. If you'd like to read the book instead, there should be a link in the show notes to purchase it. Otherwise, be sure to subscribe to these videos so that you'll be notified when the next one arrives. Thanks for watching. So, the purpose of, the goal of the book and the goal of these videos, which are based on the book, is to change the way that you see the world. And at the heart of that change is a shift in perspective. Now, rather than try and explain to you what I mean by that shift in perspective, I'm going to give you an example or an exercise. But don't worry, it won't be too much like homework or anything. We're going to do it right now. And the exercise revolves around a kind of odd claim that I'm going to make. And the claim is this, that there is no better example of why we're going to be okay and how we could be great than the coronavirus pandemic. Now, I know that that might seem like a kind of ridiculous thing to say. It might seem a little tone deaf too, or insensitive, and that's not my intention. This pandemic, the one that we are still in as of this recording, is a disaster, something we will not soon forget. But it is also a great opportunity for the kind of thinking that you will need to get the most out of the ideas in these videos and in the book. So it's a great exercise in thinking a little bit differently. Now, what do I mean by that? So again, pandemics suck. We all know that now. They are horrible. However, pandemics, like other disasters, happen regularly and have happened regularly throughout human history. So what changes is how we respond to them. And it is the change in that response compared to the last time, and the time before that, and the time before that, and the time before that. It shows us how we have changed. And specifically, it shows us how our capabilities and our standards have gone up. So let me give you an example of that. Specifically, let me give you an example of how our standards have risen. Most of the fatalities from COVID-19, about 80%, occur in people over the age of 70. Yet, it wasn't until about 50 years ago that average life expectancy for the average human being rose above 70. So, in other words, all of the effort that we are putting into preventing deaths from COVID-19, from preventing the spread of the disease, and all of the knock-on effects from that in terms of our economies shutting down and all of the conflict that has occurred and all of it, or rather I shouldn't say all of it, but maybe 80% of it, was geared towards saving the lives of folks who at any other time in human history, statistically speaking, didn't exist, right? For most of human history, the average person did not make it to the age of 70, right? So I'm not saying that it's a bad thing that we have done these, that we have taken these steps to save the lives of people over the age of 70. I'm not saying that at all. However, our ancestors didn't have the luxury to care about that. Clearly, our standards have risen a lot. I mean, just to put it in simple terms, 70 isn't what it used to be. Okay, so how have our capabilities improved? Well, in this case, the examples are, there's even more, and they're not too hard to figure out. So obviously, we should be very scared of all of these nasty pathogens that can come out of the natural world, like COVID-19, like many, many more that have appeared over time and that will probably happen in the future. But what we've learned from this most recent pandemic is that our capabilities, our ability to take on these threats has improved astoundingly to an enormous degree, right? Um, Today, a virus like COVID-19 can spread around the world in days. But our uh, knowledge of this virus, how to treat it, how to prevent it, its chemical makeup down to the cellular, down to the atomic level, spread around the world far faster and grew in size to a degree that any virus would be deeply jealous of. So, just to put it in perspective, it took millions of years for this virus to turn into this very sophisticated coronavirus that's capable of spreading so easily and infecting all kinds of animals, including human beings. And that's, it's a very impressive biological machine. However, it took us, Homo sapiens, about 3 weeks. 3 weeks to come up with a vaccine that would knock it out. So, millions of years of natural evolution versus 3 weeks of lab work. That's a pretty amazing disparity. Now, in other ways, how we can wipe out whole species and ravage the earth. We can strip an entire ecosystem of all life in 3 weeks or less. This power that we have and that we have grown over the last several hundred years is depressing and frightening. But in this case, where we were confronted with a threat to our existence, depending, maybe not the greatest one that we've ever faced, but certainly a threat, and we were able to take it on and knock it out so quickly. I mean, that's amazing. That's great. So go us. So that's one example of how our capabilities have improved in the face of disaster, right? Remember, disasters happen all the time. It's how we respond to them that shows us how far we've come. So there's a lot of other examples like that. Just really quickly, a few more. The shutdowns, the social distancing has meant that we have to stay at home. We weren't able to go out and socialize. We weren't able to go to our jobs. However, technology like Zoom, like email, even technology that we completely take for granted now, but which didn't exist for most people the last time there was a large pandemic, say in 1918, like the phone, right? How many people had phones 100 years ago? Well, all of this technology allowed us to continue to maintain human connections with other people, to literally have face-to-face connections with loved ones all around the world. And it allowed many, many, many people to continue to work, even while forced to stay home. For a lot of people, it was probably pretty nice to work from home. I know that's how I felt, but that's another story. So, speaking of jobs and a lack of jobs during the pandemic, millions and millions of people were forced out of work. But for many, many people in many countries, we had governments that were able and willing to support people financially during that time and continue to do so. Now, just how well those governments did it, and it's very uneven from country to country and within countries. There's plenty lacking in the government response, but I'll tell you, the previous pandemics, there wasn't even that. So that's another example of how our standards have improved and our capabilities have improved. And finally, I remember in March of 2020 when things became serious here in the States. There was some little bit of anxiety about how this was all going to go down, right? What was going to happen? Was the world going to fall apart? Was society going to crumble? That didn't happen. I think I knew at the time that it wasn't going to happen, but there was that sense. But that's not what happened, right? In fact, food distribution, electricity, water, all these things continued basically unchanged. And I think a lot of people didn't really notice that fact. But again, that's something that we take for granted now that just was not the case in the past. So those are all examples of how our capabilities have improved and our standards have risen. And there's a lot more examples like that. However, I don't want to um, harp on this upside, right? Because I want to be very clear that a pandemic is not a good thing. Individual pain and suffering goes on every day, and then a pandemic, it dumps even more. And it dumps even more, the most, on people for whom things are the hardest already. And if that's what you see, if that's all you can see in this pandemic, then that's good. I would rather you see that than just see what I'm trying to get you to see, right? The big picture. We need that empathy. We need that connection to other people and that empathy with other people's suffering. But what I'm saying is that we should have both, and that you should have both. Because that perspective is also important. So, for everyone who is scared about the end of the world, worried about the future, whether it's because of global warming or political problems or asteroid strikes or pandemics, whatever, hopefully this experience maybe has taught you that uh, a body blow is not a death knell, right? We can survive this. We did survive it. So why does this all matter? Well, it matters because, as I put in the title of the book, we could be great. But in order to get there, we have to acknowledge that we are going to be okay. Far from living on the edge of disaster, we're actually at the border of a world that's far better than even the best of what we have now. But in order to get there, we have to acknowledge how far we've come, right? You can't go to point C if you don't even know that point B exists, or you refuse to acknowledge that it exists. And unfortunately, that's what I see around me a lot. I see a lot of pessimism. I see a lot of anxiety about the future, which is unfortunate, but not surprising. Maybe living through the pandemic will convince a lot of people that they should be more optimistic about the future, but I'm not too optimistic about that myself. So for everyone else, I hope you will continue to watch these videos. In the next one, I'm going to be talking about the after age specifically. I'm going to define the after age. I'm going to define what it's after. And I'm going to try and convince you through a mixture of facts, some of which you're familiar with perhaps, and some of which maybe you're not, or just haven't thought about much, and also an argument to you and your perspective. And also I'm going to talk a little bit about me and my perspective, trying to convince you that we are going to be okay, mostly because we already are okay. Now, if you think that that's total BS, I understand. I would just ask you to suspend your disbelief just a little bit longer, okay? I'm not saying that things are perfect. Far from it. I'm saying that things are okay, right? Okay, I deliberately chose that word, okay, because it means just okay. Like, it's okay. Like, how are you doing? I'm okay, right? Um, it's 50%. It's mediocre. It's not bad. It's not terrible, but it's not great either. Now, and the other thing is that I'm definitely not saying that even this state of mediocrity, this okayness, is evenly distributed, right? It's not. For many, 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 many people, life is not okay. And that honestly is my primary motivation for writing the book and creating these videos, is because I think that we can all be, at the very least, okay. I think we're already headed in that direction. I feel very optimistic about us all getting there. And by all of us, I do mean every single person alive. But I would like to make sure I'm not 100% about anything. And I would like your help, honestly. And, I think that one great way that you can help is just by changing the way that you think about the world. I do hope that by being more optimistic and having that perspective, you will feel better about the world. I think that even for people for whom things are going well, in all other ways, not knowing what the future holds for all of us is kind of a drag, right? I mean, even if you're at the top of your game, if you're not sure if there's going to be a human race in 100 years, then what's the freaking point, right? The fact that pessimism is really not well founded makes it even more of a waste of time. So I hope you can throw that off and be more optimistic about the future. And I hope that helps you. But that's really just the first part. The second part of the book and the continuing videos that I'm going to be posting are about how we can be great, and specifically how you can help us to be great. And I don't really see a big difference between you and we. I hope benefits you to the same extent that you're helping all of us. And while there's many reasons why we are not great, I think the pandemic actually shows us with an extra bit of clarity exactly where the biggest problem lies. And that is that we are just not as good at cooperating as individuals, as groups, as nations, as organizations, as we could be, right? We're okay at cooperating. We are okay, mediocre at it, but we could be better. And every little bit better that we get at cooperating has enormous benefits for all of us. It's how you go from being okay to being great, or at least better than okay. So the second part of the book and the videos to come are going to be filled with actionable ideas for you to think about and potentially change the way you cooperate with other people. So it starts with the individual, and then further sections, topics spread from the individual to groups of people and to nations, and then to like really abstract ideas like government and money. But the whole time, I've tried very hard to bring these ideas back to you and what they mean for you as an individual. How can you as an individual see these things differently, with the goal of increasing cooperation for all of us? I'm not asking you to, go out and volunteer or join the army or start a political campaign or anything like that. Maybe I should be. I think I'm too much of a skeptic to like believe in that kind of stuff. Although I'm not knocking anyone who does that. It's just not my approach. I'm just trying to get you to change the way you see the world, and maybe even just a little bit. I do think that on a grand scale, that's one of the best things that we can do to help all of us to be great. So that's it for this introduction. The next video, as I said, will be about the after age. I'll be defining the after age, explaining exactly what it's after. It is after something. And yeah, if you'd like to read the book, there should be a link in the show notes. Otherwise, please do hit the subscribe button so you'll be notified when that video comes out. And thanks for watching.